Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Shakespeare and Company, and thank you for coming out in such great numbers on this very chilly Parisian evening. But then, why wouldn't you come out in such great numbers for such a wonderful poet as we have with us this evening? To be any nation's Poet Laureate in the 21st century requires an extraordinary broad empathic range, the capacity to contain and represent multitudes, a way of finding the right words not just to mark royal marriages and births or commemorate the deceased, but to lend dignity to a country's losses and caution humility in the face of its triumphs, to expose and to confront its contradictions, to give voice to its voiceless, to speak truth to power. It is, to borrow from tonight's guest, to be the clerk of hearts. Carol Ann Duffy has fulfilled this role for the United Kingdom during a particularly turbulent decade for the country, with all the gusto, finesse, compassion and grace that any fan of her work might have expected. Her latest collection, and her last as Poet Laureate, showcases Carol Ann Duffy's renowned gift for conjuring a scene with just a few strokes of her pen, for making her most private memories resonate with our own, for identifying how events from our collective memory chime with the archetypes of our collective unconscious. The title of the collection also seems to provide a solution to the perennial riddle of how an official poet might manage not to portray her creative, imaginative and moral freedom, how she might fulfil the duty of memorialising the public sphere while continuing to authentically honour the personal. The answer, in a word, sincerity. The voice behind Sincerity's 60 or so poems is that of the shape-shifting storyteller, incarnating an assortment of roles, among them a, quote, luckless loutess of a troubadour, a grim, double M, foundling, and even in one poem, a scarecrow. It's also a voice that hops nimbly between every register of the language, as comfortable with the vast as it is with the intimate, as adept at constructing playfully delicate euphemisms as it is with unleashing, when needs must, and in the poet's own words, a spicy mouthful of curses. Sincerity is a humane, funny, profound, moving and consistently surprising book. Its sheer singularity caused the Times to assert, "You can't classify Carol Ann Duffy as a love poet or a comic poet or as a political poet, because she is all these things, but so much more." Carol Ann Duffy lives in Manchester, where she's Professor and Creative Director of the Writing School at Manchester Metropolitan University. Her poetry has received many awards, including the Signal Prize for Children's Verse, the Whitbread Forward and T.S. Eliot Prizes, and the Lannan and E.M. Forster Prize in America. She was appointed Poet Laureate of the United Kingdom in 2009. Her collections include Meantime, Love Poems and The Bees, which won the Costa Poetry Award. She was made a DBE in the 2015 New Year's Honours List. Erica Wagner has described Carol Ann Duffy as a poet of skill, talent and great heart, while the Scotsman declared Sincerity magnificent, grounded, heartfelt and dedicated to the notion that poetry can give us the music of life itself. Please join me in welcoming Carol Ann Duffy to Shakespeare and Company.
Thank you. It's lovely to be back here. Thank you to Sylvia and all the staff in this magnificent creation. And I hope wherever you're tucked away, you can hear me. Okay. Gorilla. It was at Berlin Zoo, don't ask, where I came face to thick glass with a gorilla. We stared each other out. Its eyes were smashed rage under a pelmet of wrath. Its nose, 2 boxing gloves. Its mouth, an unliftable curse. I wished it were free. Down on the equatorial belt, chilling to Morrissey. With a day's more evolution, it could even be president. Just saying. So I'm going to read from this new book, Sincerity, which came out in the UK last month. And obviously my intention with the poems is to be sincere about myself, really, and my reactions to events in my life or more public events. There's a folk etymology for the word sincerity, which is without wax, so no covering up. And sometimes I will introduce the poems if I feel they need an introduction. Other times I might just read them and let you allow the poem to explain itself. Clerk of Hearts. As they step from the path onto the boats, I am there at my place under the trees, listing the categories: humility, shame. My dealings with life have been so long ago, I imagine I resemble shadow or watermark. I am unanswered prayer, like poetry, dread. Whatever I did, it might have been that. Now I watch each one depart, perceive their hearts. Old diaries I read at a glance, acceptance, disdain. They will forget, but I take time, devoted clerk of hearts. Sometimes I stand on the bridge as they drift away, being more and more dead. A kingfisher arrowing upriver, joy as colour, then thunder above, a boiling of last words, and their crafts vanishing into the heavy rain. The rain. That time will come when it starts to rain in your quiet room, grief researching you, its curious small thumbs on your closed eyes, on your pulse, or smudging the ink of this, or dipping into that glass of wine. The moment stammered. Too intimate, relentless biographer, poring over your ruined books, persistent, till every surface is soaked, as though you lamented night and day for a lifetime, or were penned, invented. Leave the room to the rain. The clock's hands float on its drowned face, and photographs swim from their frames, and hours of sorrow, rain, rain, sorrow. Why climb the stairs to lie down there, be drenched, tasted, known by the pitiless rain? You have dead parents. Elephants. When I was small, I saw the circus elephants on Blackpool sands, a slow line of extraordinary sadness. An elephant holds more anguish than a man. We should not see them, except where they choose to be, in their grey empathies, their bulked knowledge. They walk on song, gravity's grave clergy. They're perfect for the earth, its emigrant distances, its pooled waters. If the gods were to gaze at this world, they would hazard elephants. I think one of our commonly shared sadnesses, which is a sadness that comes inevitably, is what's known as the empty nest syndrome, when our children leave home to begin their own lives. And we tend to be very reserved or stiff upper-lipped about it when our children leave. Oh, I can travel more, or I can take up watercolours. But in fact, it is a real grief. And I hope in the next year or so to gather poems from all times which look at this, and perhaps construct an anthology of poems that people can read. My poem in this book is called Empty Nest. Dear child, the house pines when you leave. I research whether there is any bird who grieves over its empty nest. Your vacant room is a still life, framed by the unclosed door, read by sunlight, an open book on the floor. I fold the laundry, hang your flower dress in darkness, forget me not. Beyond the tall fence, I hear horse chestnuts counting themselves. Then autumn, Christmas, you come and go singing. Then ice, snowdrops. Our home hides its face in hands of silence. I knew mothering, but not this other thing which hefts my heart each day heavier. Now I know. This is the shy sorrow. It will not speak up. I play one chord on the piano. It vanishes, tactful, as dusk muffles the garden. A magpie staring from its branch. The marble girl standing by the bench. From the local church, bells like a spelling, and the evening star like a text. And then what next? Some poems I wrote about the stresses that you might have read we're experiencing in the UK at the moment. So that apart from Trump, which is a stress in itself, we've had an added stress. And even if you try to avoid it, it leaks into your personal life through the kitchen radio. There's no avoiding it. The ex-ministers. They rise above us, the ex-ministers, in private jets, left wing, right wing, drop low to Beijing, Kuwait, the Congo, Kazakhstan. Their deals and contracts in the old red boxes for sentimental reasons. Beyond our shores, they float on super yachts, Nostrovia, guests of the mortal gods, the vague moon, a Bitcoin. We are nothing to them now, lemmings going over the white cliffs of Dover. And when they are here, they are unseen, chauffeured in blacked-out cars to the bars in the heavens, far glittering shards, to look down on our lucrative democracy. Though they have bought the same face, so they will know each other. Next poem's called Britannia, and it refers to two public disasters that happened in my life. One in childhood, disaster called Aberfan, in which a coal heap of coal on a hillside slid down when it began to rain and covered a whole school of children. And the other one, more recently, the burning of Grenfell Tower in London. Britannia. A day 50 years ago surfaces as I watch the rolling news in the days after Grenfell, and somebody screams, "Bastards!" off camera. We've been asked to bring a sixpence, a shilling, a florin, when they held the special assembly for Aberfan. My father shouted The coal board were criminals, murderers, raged again when they looted the fund. I should not connect the two, but I do. The school drowned in slurry on the small black and white screen. The tower in flames on full colour plasma. The constant, dutiful queen. To read a poem about the place I grew up in England. I hope you find echoes of where you grew up in this poem. I call it Junction 13. There was nothing to do, so we hitched to the airport 10 years early for the flight. Wore love bites. Nothing going on. So a youth noosed 6 school ties round a horse, but it fled up the new M6, timed each kiss. What else but roll the snow up and down the estate to a grubby moon, a name on a metal comb, or move in bored pairs through the harvest festival tent, switching the prizes. It was all prose. Nada. Sat on hot leather seats in the back of a Ford Cortina. Are we nearly there yet? Not yet. Not yet. Nothing. Pocket dictionaries with snide words highlighted in pink. Prick. Ejaculate. Ball. Played tennis with a wall. There was nothing to do, but limp for no reason, speak in foreign accents to strangers. Sunglasses made you famous. Nothing happening. All summer in the spinney, building a bonfire we were never permitted to light. Everyone white. What else but smoke tea in a graveyard, steal the flowers for our mothers, get spanked for it, bedtime in daylight, or hide in the wardrobe, no one was looking for you, or tell lies without purpose, walk home trying out blindness, zilch. The world was not here. It flowed away under the motorway bridge, the world. It roared past the platform. This is just where you start from. Wood. I reckoned I'd left behind the little wood at the back of the houses when I left all the rest. Though I knew each nail we'd hammered into the trunk of the oak, how it wept its sticky hurt, to climb up and gape in awe at a beaky nest. But the wood has followed me here. It must have taken it years to drag its roots over the fields by roads and motorways, knee-deep in wheat or oilseed rape, haunted by sheep, till I see it tonight, etched on a slate sky at the end of the garden, the same slim path to enter it by. So I go in, reverent on pine needles, acorns, to set my foot on a nail, still bearing me up. Good. There was a branch I never could reach, but now it's simple to settle, stay late, ignoring the dead woman stood at her gate, who calls me uselessly home, home from the wood. Next place, a poem's called Roundstone, which is a little seaside village in Connemara in Ireland. Roundstone. On the beach at Roundstone, where my parents' ashes had separately embarked, I walked out of love. I deciphered my mother's advice from the sea's lisp, its wheesht. As I crossed the line in the sand, some lover had scored through a heart. And it wasn't a mobile phone I put to my ear, but a conch, taking instruction from echoes to exit the wrong life. A low sun nailing its colours to a mast, my seaweed wreath left for the tide to accept. Physics. In the multiple universe theory of quantum physics, we did get married. For better and for worse, we are there and there, elsewhere, not here, where I stand solo, free as a spinster, barefoot on warm grass, sinking a spritzer, gleeful, there is a God. And you are wherever, beyond care. But I do wonder how we are doing the flip side of that swithering coin after the nuptials, petals in our hair. You walk towards me across the terrace, all I want of love in that world. Correct, when you promised all would be well, well. Then again, I feign sleep at your footfall, and we are in hell. Next poem is a true incident that happened to me in Marrakesh, but the incident stayed with me and seemed a good metaphor. I'll get that in a minute. Thanks. For not where I am at this stage in my life, but when I am, if you see what I mean. Not somewhere, but somewhen. The monkey. One wrong turn, and I was in the piazza from hell, where a rogue clamped a small monkey onto my back. It groomed my hair gently as he grinned with one tooth, demanding money, and the monkey swung round to nestle in my arms like a baby. Then the worst happened. I bonded. £500 later, back at the hotel, I schmoozed a travel crib from the concierge. The monkey loved its bath, splashed, played, but bit the toothbrush in half, then run up the curtain. Once a mother, always. I crooned. Perhaps I had a wicked childhood from the sound of music. And the monkey grew curious, quiet, crept closer. I tickled its soft back till it slept. There are good schools here. I have rented a pleasant house with a high-walled garden, turned vegan. The monkey shows a real aptitude for finger painting, gym, percussion, and will sit quietly watching the Jungle Book while I work. I am rewriting Aesop's fables from the point of view of the creatures, the world's woof. At night, toys tidied, all safe, house hushed, I sip my banana daiquiri and marvel at the possible, the road not taken, etc., the drunkenness of things being various, bright insights in the darkness only poetry can align. As for my university professorship, I shall resign. All best wishes to the new laureate. The monkey is mine. It's a poem I wrote in memory of Seamus Heaney and the way sometimes the poetry world can be vicious. Message in a bottle. You left, and the craft sprung a leak. Some Egypts tried to plug it with their pens, but of course this friggery failed to work. We shipped water, bailed, listed, all at sea. There were fights, so little at stake, mutterings about chucking the youngest overboard, chunterings about ducking the oldest. Your man skedaddled one night in a lifeboat. I sat on the end of the plank, queasy, considering my position, sherry in a hip flask. The moon was, what now? A trump orange? Feck it. I added you to my prayers, Yeats, Joyce, Beckett. We spied land, but the current urged us away. Was that yourself walking the shore, long-haired, thoughtful? So I'm going to read one more from Sincerity and then read some earlier poems rather than read the whole book. This is a poem written at New Year, so it seems a nice time of year to read it here in Paris. It's called Long Table. It is a long table where the folks sit, supping their ale or sipping wine, friends of mine. They gather in shadow, candlelight, heads haloed as though painted in oils, singled all. Their voices lift and fall, a blare of merriment, a blur of soft prayer, beloved there. My green man, grey-haired now, yet mirthful in sorrow, as winter sun eases ice from trees. Our Lady of Good Cheer garlanded the flowers and leaves of the old year in her hair, and the lasses and lads whose faces flare brightest at the feast in uplift for youth's gift. Our dead waver outside, tethered by memory. Their own darkness is light, seen too late. If they could live again, they would listen, even to silent drifting snow, its kind no. But the fire chortles here, rubbing its hands of flame, and we are carousing in rough song, blessed in the small hours, where cold bites at the house, though cannot enter yet, and well met. Let's go into this bag like Mary Poppins. I slightly tease myself in the poem The Monkey, referring to a book called The World's Woof. For those of you who don't know, that's because I wrote a book called The World's Wife. So I'm going to finish with some poems from that. And I took all the voices and characters in that collection from my books as a child, or from my school days, from fairy tale or mythology or the Bible or history, wherever, and tried to find excuse me, something surprising in what was very familiar. And the way I did that was by always using a female voice. So one of the characters in one of my favourite books, Ovid's Metamorphoses, where we find characters like King Midas, who turned everything into gold, is Tiresias. And I guess Tiresias would have been a middle-aged man. He went out for a walk one day in the woods, and on his walk he stumbled over two snakes who were attempting to mate. No idea what that might look like. But he liked not the look of it, so he prevented it by beating the snakes to a pulp with his walking stick. But the gods were looking down. They're very angry at him, so they punished him on the spot by turning him into a woman for 7 years, and then at the end he could become a man again. So I wondered, if you were married to him, how you would cope with this situation when he came home from the walk, thus chastised. So here she is, Mrs. Tiresias. All I know is this: he went out for his walk a man and came home female. Out the back gate with his stick, the dog, wearing his gardening trousers, an open-necked shirt, and a jacket in Harris tweed I'd patched at the elbows myself, whistling. He liked to hear the first cuckoo of spring, then write to the Times. I'd usually heard it days before him, but I never let on. I'd heard one that morning while he was asleep, just as I heard, at about 6 p.m, a faint sneer of thunder up in the woods, and felt a sudden heat at the back of my knees. He was late getting back. I was brushing my hair at the mirror and running a bath when a face swam into view next to my own. The eyes were the same, but in the shocking V of the shirt were breasts. When he uttered my name in his woman's voice, I passed out. Life has to go on. I put it about that he was a twin, and this was his sister come down to live, while he himself was working abroad. And at first I tried to be kind, blow-drying his hair till he learnt to do it himself, lending him clothes till he started to shop for his own, sisterly, holding his soft new shape in my arms all night. Then he started his period. 1 week in bed. 2 doctors in. 3 painkillers 4 times a day. And later, a letter to the powers that be demanding full paid menstrual leave 12 weeks per year. I see him still, his selfish, pale face peering at the moon through the bathroom window. "The curse," he said. "The curse. Don't kiss me in public," he snapped the next day. "I don't want folk getting the wrong idea." It got worse. After the split, I would glimpse him out and about, entering glitzy restaurants on the arms of powerful men, though I knew for sure there'd be nothing of that going on if he had his way. Or, on TV, telling the women out there how, as a woman himself, he knew how we felt. His flirt's smile. The one thing he never got right was the voice. A cling peach slithering out from its tin. I gritted my teeth. "And this is my lover," I said, "the one time we met at a glittering ball under the lights among tinkling glass, and watched the way he stared at her violet eyes, at the blaze of her skin, at the slow caress of her hand on the back of my neck, and saw him picture her bite at the fruit of my lips, and hear my red, wet cry in the night as she shook his hand, saying, 'How do you do?' And I noticed then his hands, her hands, the clash of their sparkling rings and their painted nails. A tiny one I stole from the diary of the wife of Charles Darwin. I found a first edition here. Mrs. Darwin. 7th of April 1852. Went to the zoo. I said to him, "Something about that chimpanzee over there reminds me of you." Probably my favourite of the old stories is the story of Faust, who did a deal with the devil and sold his soul. And for that he could have anything he wanted. He could time travel, he could do magic. All wealth was his, but after 20 or so years he had to pay up. So here is the equally dislikable Mrs. Faust giving her version of events. And they met when they were at university. First things first, I married Faust. We met as students, shacked up, split up, made up, hitched up, got a mortgage on a house, flourished academically, BA, MA, PhD, no kids, 2 toweled bathrobes, hers, his. We worked, we saved, we moved again, fast cars, a boat with sails, a second home in Wales, the latest toys, computers, mobile phones. We prospered, moved again. Faust's face? Clever, greedy, slightly mad. I was as bad. I grew to love the lifestyle, not the life. He grew to love the kudos, not the wife. He went to whores. I felt, not jealousy, but chronic irritation. I went to yoga, tai chi, feng shui, therapy, colonic irrigation. And Faust would boast at dinner parties of the cost of doing deals out east, then take his lust to Soho in a cab, to say the least, lay the ghost, get lost, meet panthers, feast. He wanted more. I came home late one winter's evening, hadn't eaten. Faust was upstairs in his study in a meeting. I smelled cigar smoke, hellish, oddly sexy, not allowed. I heard Faust and the other laugh aloud. Next thing, the world, as Faust said, spread its legs. First, politics, safe seat, MP, right hon, KG, then banks, offshore, abroad, and business, vice chairman, chairman, owner, lord. Enough? Encore. Faust was cardinal, pope, knew more than God, flew faster than the speed of sound around the globe, lunched, walked on the moon, golfed, hole in one, lit a fat Havana on the sun. Then he backed a hunch, invested in smart bombs, in harms, Faust dealt in arms. He got in deep, got out, bought farms, cloned sheep. Faust surfed the internet for like-minded Bo Peep. As for me, I went my own sweet way, saw Rome in a day, spun gold from hay, had a facelift, had my breasts enlarged, my buttocks tightened, went to China, Thailand, Africa, returned, enlightened. Turned 40, celibate, teetotal, vegan, Buddhist, 41, went blonde, went redhead, went brunette, went native, went ape, went berserk, went bananas, went on the road. Went on the run alone, went home. Faust was in. A word, he said. I spent the night being pleasured by a virtual Helen of Troy. Face that launched 1,000 ships. I kissed its lips. Thing is, I've made a pact with Mephistopheles, the devil's boy. He's on his way to take away what's owed, reap what I sowed. For all these years of gagging for it, going for it, rolling in it, I've sold my soul. At this, I heard a serpent's hiss, tasted evil, knew its smell. A scaly devil hand poked up right through the terracotta Tuscan tiles at Faust's bare feet and dragged him, oddly smirking, there and then, straight down to hell. Oh well. Faust Will left everything, the yacht, the several homes, the Learjet, the helipad, the loot, etc., the lot, to me. C'est la vie. When I got ill, it hurt like hell. I bought a kidney with my credit card. Then I got well. I keep Faust's secret still. The clever, cunning, callous bastard didn't have a soul to sell. Thank you so much. I'm going to read one more poem. I don't know if you saw the armistice commemorations. The director Danny Boyle had portraits in sand around British beaches, and the faces were removed by the tides, and he asked me to write a poem to go with that installation, I suppose you'd call it. So I'll finish with this poem, The Wound in Time. It is the wound in time, the centuries' tides, chanting their bitter psalms, cannot heal it. Not the war to end all wars, death's birthing place, the earth nursing its ticking metal eggs, hatching new carnage. But how could you know, brave as belief, as you boarded the boats, singing the end of God in the poisonous shrapnelled air? poetry gargling its own blood. We sense it was love you gave your world for. The town squares silent, awaiting their cenotaphs. What happened next? War. And after that, war. And now, war. War. History might as well be water, chastising the shore. For we learn nothing from your endless sacrifice, your faces drowning in the pages of the sea. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Carol Ann. There's not much more a bookseller can say after a reading like that to convince you, I'm sure, to go home with some of Carol Ann Duffy's work. Although I will add, as you can probably see, it is such, to go with the extraordinary poems, it is actually a beautiful edition of Sincerity that's been produced, particularly for giving this holiday season, so bear that in mind. Before you go out into the cold, do stick around, have a glass of wine with us, get to know each other, continue the conversation with each other, continue the conversation with Carol Ann. She'll be here signing copies of the book, all of which are available at the front. Thank you so much for coming, and please just join me one more time in saying thank you to Carol Ann Duffy.